at is a monster from some bygone era. It's time to show Kong that man is king.
Kong is such a huge part of the mythology of cinema, and it tells this incredible story of man versus nature.
Every part of what the original Kong is the best individual pieces of cinema. It doesn't feel derivative of something that you've seen before.
You know, in the very first story, Kong is referred to as
Kong, the eighth wonder of the world!
Kong exists to inspire wonder.
He was on buildings, swatting down planes. It was high adventure for us.
I don't know anybody that's ever seen one of those movies and hasn't been captivated by things we've never even thought of before.
The exciting thing became, how do we tell a new story within that mythology? How do we take the things people loved about Kong and reinvent them not for reinvention's sake, but for a reason that solidifies why this movie should exist? This is a different thing. This isn't man versus nature. This is man versus God.
Jordan has an extraordinary visual imagination.
Good, reset.
He was sending me concept art that he was coming up with, and he's conceived of it in his mind in a very brave and bold and original way.
And when the question was proposed of, hey, we want to make a new Kong movie, my first response was, why? Why do that? The 1933 movie is incredible. It is film history. Peter Jackson's version is an incredible remake of that Beauty and the Beast story. And for the first time, we don't want to tell the Beauty and the Beast story.
Jordan came in the door with this idea for setting the movie in the 1970s, which we thought was really fresh because it's the dawn of the Landsat program, which was the first time we started mapping the Earth with satellites.
Ready for seismic charges.
There was still a sense that out there and beyond the far reaches of the world, there may be places we didn't yet know.
The early 70s was still a time when, like, the hippies believed that, you know, the world was going to change, and there was an innocence to that time that I think is perfect. Perfect way to approach the story.
Mark my words. There'll never be a more screwed up time in Washington.
It puts it into perspective because we know what the 70s was. We know politically what that climate was. It's gritty. It's not pretty.
To end the war and bring peace with honor in Vietnam.
It allowed for us to play with a bunch of characters coming out of the fog of the Vietnam War and going into this new, uncharted, dangerous place and contending with a place that's far more dangerous than the conflict they just left.
Commander in the sky, commander on the ground.
I'm commander wherever I am.
At this point in 1973 in human history, we no longer had a balance with the world. We were actively destroying the world. We were destroying myth. And so to take these people to an island where it's untouched by man. And so there's a pureness to it. There's a catharsis to it. We're leaving the world that is falling apart. And suddenly we're in a pure place. And then you go to that pure place and then you're put back in the food chain.
In this iteration, Kong is being reconceived as a myth come to life. He is truly monstrous in size and scale and scope.
It's this giant beast, and it's initially very easy to fear something that large and ferocious. And it's when you begin to respect and acknowledge the humanity that exists in this creature that it draws you closer to it.
He's not a gorilla. He's not an animal. He's not a, beast. He's a being. And it's just something that we don't understand yet.
He is the last of his kind. He serves a very necessary function on the island because he keeps the other creatures at bay, and there's a balance there, and that's Kong.
Kong is king. I mean, he's the biggest thing on this island, and yet he defends when he needs to, but for the most part, he's actually a quite peaceful character.
Kong as a character had a bit of empathy and a bit of pathos. And you saw a childlike quality in it. You saw his brain ticking.
Kong's a pretty good king. This is his home. We're just guests here.
The journey of Kong in Skull Island is that he goes from being a figure of terror, an alpha predator who seems to be a destructive threat, but he becomes an emblem of the natural order.
Kong is God on this island. He's the only thing keeping them lizard things on the ground.
He's right, Colonel. We can't kill Kong. And that other creature, that's the threat.
You have the military in one camp and you have the scientists on the other. When they do eventually crash and end up trapped on Skull Island, you see how the different skill sets from each group kind of come into play.
You are going to tell me everything I don't know, or I'm going to blow your head off.
Everyone has a different agenda, and I think we represent the different facets of humanity in our approach to controlling the unknown and dealing with fear.
Then it's about how the different people reconcile this thing to be a higher power. That's what became exciting. And that's why it's important that our Kong is that tall and that big, because it carries a weight to it. It carries a grandiose quality where you look at a speck of a human in the shadow of the Colossus.
In the center of all of this, you have a woman who's fighting for her rights and is showing a new way of being a woman, creating a female character that's much more dynamic and more hands-on than what we've previously seen in the movie.
When I first started talking to Brie about it, it wasn't about this woman who needed to be saved.
It's people like you lost us support back home.
You're not actually going to blame the people without guns for losing the war, are you?
Camera's way more dangerous than a gun.
If anything, she needed her own saving internally, as everybody in the 70s was sort of spiraling to figure out who they were.
You don't strike me as a war photographer.
Anti-war photographer.
And being a woman doesn't just mean that you're like beautiful and sort of sit there and wait to be grasped and taken a hold of. Women are right there on the line, on the ground, making it happen and working just as hard as the men are, but there's still an energy there that's feminine and that is working with it.
Get down!
She has no weapon. She's just interested in photographing the truth.
We made a conscious choice with this movie that I wouldn't have any weapon through this, because I do feel like although she's grappling with what the camera means to her, she's trying to find a fragment of it to take back, to be able to share and make a change in the world. And she hopes that with the power of these photographs, there will be a way to protect these things instead of constantly feeling like the answer is war.
These men did not die in vain. I just like the fact that Packer's a warrior who's very loyal to his men. He does have a huge resentment because Kong is killing his men. So it becomes his mission. I became Ahab, he was my white whale.
There's enough munitions on that down sea stallion to finish the job.
Packard's war with Kong is as futile as screaming into a hurricane. Kong is a force of nature.
We're going down!
Hang up, Reeves, I'm coming!
Kong's protecting his home, and Packard is protecting his men. And they're both in situations that they have no control over. You understand them both.
It's about who really is the monster. And there's this point where that kind of turns, where Kong is the threat, but then we realize that the threat is really the human characters who come into that environment.
I think all of these characters, to some degree, are kind of dented cans trying to figure themselves out. I like characters with imperfections. I think that flawed characters and the flaws of characters are what make them memorable.
Die, you motherfucker.
This movie is not just escapist entertainment, you know, it is, but at the same time, as a metaphor, the movie is about our world right now. Conflict, how to resolve conflict. People that believe, like, if it doesn't work at first, get a bigger hammer, that kind of point of view.
The film will function as a fantastic, breathtaking piece of spectacle, but I think there will be a commentary on the responsibility we have as human beings with our destructive tools.
Hopefully they think about their role in the world and think about what role myth plays in their life, what role nature plays in their life, what symbiosis they have with the world, you know? But more importantly, I just want them to walk out and have had fun. The thing about Kong Skull Island to me is that it's all of these different things. You know, it is a genre mashup of 70s films and very contemporary films, and hopefully we can sort of fuse the throwback elements and the very modern elements into something that becomes kind of timeless.
It's amazing.
Okay. We just fundamentally are trying to treat our Kong in a way that honors what came before it, but paves a new path.